Have you ever wondered where the problems in the world today would exist if we had deeper connection to ourselves, others, and the environment and acted from that place? Welcome to the Conscious Action Podcast with your host, Brian Berneman, who believe that connection is the key to taking conscious action as individuals and creating a better world. We are here to raise awareness and inspire meaningful action by sharing stories, knowledge, and conversations with thought leaders and change makers. From sustainability to well-being and everything related to conscious living, our mission is to empower you to be the change that you want to see in the world. Welcome, everyone, to a new episode of the Conscious Action Podcast. I am Brian Berneman, your host, and I have the pleasure to be joined all the way in Germany by Chrissy, Christina, however you want to go by your name. I struggle with the pronunciation, but you can do a better job than me. It's a pleasure to have you here and to reconnect again after, connecting here in New Zealand. And for everybody that is watching and listening to us, what can you share about you and your journey so far?
So my name is Chrissy, or at least this is the name that most of the people know me by. And if I want to share something about myself, I am a lot of things, I would say, and I do a lot of things. So it's always interesting to find an introduction that kind of, gives you a glimpse of what I'm doing, where I am, who I am. And I think I would start a little bit with where I'm coming from, because that in the end shaped me and what I'm doing now. I grew up in Germany, and I already at a young age had a really strong connection to music. So I played a lot of instruments, played flute, I played saxophone, I played a lot of things. And I think as everyone, I experienced a childhood that was not always easy. Not always rainbows and butterflies. And when I was 14, I came across something that opened up as really my healing channel that I still use, and that was my voice. And I always loved to sing. But when I was 14, I woke up with a clear vision of me playing guitar. Because beforehand, I was always playing flute, and I could never use my voice truly. And so I learned how to play guitar on that day, and I started writing songs, and I started to play for myself and found my medicine, and that turned out to be my medicine ever since. That is music and vocal expression. And like this, I walked through life. I played music throughout my entire life ever since. And at some point, I started to realize that what I was doing with my voice was also, I was not only writing music for entertainment. I always poured my whole heart into it. And I also came across the realization that I was also regulating my nervous system by using my voice. And that was so interesting, because when I realized that I was doing that basically my entire life, I was like, wow, I'm doing that intuitively, but what if this could help many people? What if people understand that they got given an instrument that is literally lying within them, that they can not only sing with or express with, but also regulate with? And that was basically my path that then opened. I first became a social worker, but I always wanted to become a music therapist to kind of have a framework for that. So I became a music therapist and then started to work very intuitively with the voice. So guiding people back into the connection to their voice, and how to regulate their nervous system through that, how to come into connection with what I call God through their voice. And on that path, I also found neo-emotional release, or neo-emotional release found me, better said. It is a form of psychosomatic bodywork that I'm working with. And I'm combining basically all of my tools. At the moment, I'm working with the vocal parts, so vocal embodiment, with emotional release, so psychosomatic bodywork, and spinal attunement, which is energetic bodywork. And I'm bringing all of the things together, combining basically the body, the soul, the mind, and really like a spiritual level of God.
Beautiful.
To keep it short.
Yes. Now tell me your entire life day by day. Thank you for that, Chrissy. It's really interesting. I find it fascinating, because for me, a lot of times with my own journey, there was moments of reconnecting with my body, and the importance of reconnecting with this vehicle that I have, and how to use it, and how to allow, as you're saying, to self-regulate, and how to allow things to move, and to be flowing, and to be released, and to as well use my voice. As a young kid and as a teenager, I was so shy, since I was a little kid, I wanted to be a journalist. And by the time that I was in high school, I realized, like, if I'm afraid of using my voice or asking questions to people, like, I can't be a journalist. So I started to go on this path of, like, okay, something's to change here. And I started to practice, and to practice, and to practice, and that is something that really changed it. And I remember so much when I was a kid that my siblings, every time that I always loved singing, but every time that we were in the car and music was on and I was singing, my siblings would tell me that I was ruining music. So I was still singing, but it was there somewhere. And it wasn't until I found mantras, and I found that type of singing, that I started to connect more with actually what was happening internally as I was actually singing or chanting. And as well, like, the people around me, in a sense, liked it or asked me to lead. And then, through the years doing that, and then I remember so much, one day I was doing sound healing, and suddenly I felt the need to open my mouth, and this sound started to come out. And then I was like, okay, there's so much in here. And I think that is such a powerful thing to be able to be comfortable in both speaking up or using our voice. So yeah, I would love to know a little bit more, like, Chris, in terms of, like, what you see with the people that you work with, and even perhaps, like, in general, what do you see in terms of how much people, are unable to use their voice or to use this instrument, and how much it could help them?
So big. Thank you so much for sharing, Brian. I still see you in the story, and your story with your voice. And it's actually a story that so many people share. Also I share a big part of your story. I also got told and reflected, like, not ruin, but like I still remember my mom saying, like, I had this day when I was standing on stage in the church. So when I was younger, I was Christian, and I was standing like in front of the church on Christmas Day, and I was singing like a whole song just by myself, like 5 minutes, 6 minutes. And afterwards, I just wished for my mom, saying like, wow, that was beautiful, I'm proud of you. And I still remember how she said like, oh, I thought nothing is coming out of your mouth, you know? And she didn't say, but then something came out, so I'm proud of you. She just said that, and I can still remember that clearly. And this is how like things like really small sentences that no one really, you know, like means in a hurtful way can really shape like the shame around our voice or anything, any emotion, basically, also something that I'm working with a lot. And so what I experienced over the years, I'm also hosting singing circles and singing mantras. So I'm really deeply in that like medicine as well. So it's really beautiful that you speak on that. I really came across a lot of people saying, Chrissy, I feel so ashamed of my voice. I can't sing. I feel like I cannot express my truth. I feel like I cannot express fully who I am. And it is so common that this is present. And the reason for that is that often somewhere along the way we got shamed for our voice in any kind of way. Like you're too loud, you're too quiet, you're too silent, you can't sing, you know, all of the things, like things that didn't fit the norm. Though when we look at our vocal expression or expression itself, also like emotional expression, it is how we come to this earth. It's like we're leaving the womb, we're coming out into this earth, and the first thing is we release. We scream. There's a vocal expression that is vital for our life, that is vital for our life force energy. That is actually, like, if it doesn't happen, it's quite dangerous. You know, we have to breathe, we have to express. And there's no shame around that. A child just comes to earth and it's born and it screams and it's just there, it's natural, you know. And over the years, there's this shaping happening, as always, you know, there's this shaping happening of like what is good, what is bad, the black and white. And this is often how people lose their trust. Yeah, especially their trust, actually, and their connection into their voice. And something with trust that was really interesting, what I came across this year, as I started to do a lot of freestyling. So anyway, like either I play an instrument or someone else is playing something, or I just have beats, and then I start to freestyle. I really came in touch with trust into the voice again, and how trusting the voice is actually, really trusting life, really trusting your natural expression, knowing that there is something through your voice that is connected to a higher realm that might even know better than you do. And like leaning back into this trust and surrendering into this trust again, that for me is freestyle. It's such a medicine practice. It is such a medicine practice when you just let go and you just start to sing, you just start to express. Sometimes I just start to rap, you know, and I don't know what's coming out, but suddenly I'm telling myself stories, or like I'm touching on themes, topics that I didn't even know that were, you know, like spinning in my mind, and that they were important. And suddenly I'm seeing things coming together and understand things. So it's really a lot about finding back into our expression, to actually coming back into connection, into trust. And so when I'm working with, when someone is coming to me and saying, I want to dive deeper into the connection with my voice, I have different approaches. So with some people I know, I just go into the vocal energetics. So we're moving into a raw expression of the voice. So this is basically always where I'm starting, is the raw expression. Because I truly believe that when we come into raw expression, we come into the connection. And afterwards, we can always start, to sing and, do the fun stuff and all of that. But can you actually really come into raw connection? How does it sound when you sigh, when you raw, all of these things I love to work with, because this is actually what opens up the throat energetically. And I most of the time also combine this with emotional release, because when a throat is blocked, or any chakra, any body part, it is actually connected to a trauma, an emotion that wants to be seen and expressed and felt here.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like a weaving in of all things.
Yeah, beautiful. A lot of times it's interesting because with a lot of my clients, with some of them, it's part of the process of being able to express, and I love that you shared that word of trust, because most of us, like as you're saying, if we've been conditioned to do things certain ways or to play certain roles or different things, we might not feel comfortable or trust that, if we say something, that's going to be received well. And because we have been conditioned that way, and based on, the collective trauma as well, we have this survival mechanism of, people pleasing or feeling validated by the other people and not making ridicule of ourselves. Then it's sometimes easier to just not do anything, not say anything, just stay in that place and repressing and repressing and repressing and creating all of those blockages. And when we're able to work with it from, as you're saying, different ways, from the body, from the emotion, from a release and from an opening, that can be a beautiful part of it. I remember once with a client, we were working for a few months, and then we were working on expression. We were working a lot with just doing, simple like just and that was it. And one day, like after like a couple of weeks of working with that, we were going for a walk in Ponsonby here, like on the main street of all of the restaurants and the cafes. And we were in a corner, and I told her, okay, now just burst in the middle of the street, just to see, like how she felt. And she didn't do it, like she didn't feel comfortable. I did it to show her, like it doesn't matter if some people that are walking around there, like just get caught out and it's like, oh my God, what's going on? Like this person might be weird or whatever. But to be able to bring that as well, not only in the comfort space, but expressing when there's strangers around or doing something that feels a little bit, interesting like that. So yeah, it's such a powerful way of healing, and to know our comfort zone as well.
Yeah. Wow. So powerful. Like, I love that you were working with her that way, because actually initially what you're working with is shame. And that is such a powerful thing to work with. And I really came across it, especially this year, like stronger than ever before, that I could really see how much shame society and everyone is carrying, not only around their expression, but especially there. And the interesting thing is that I found in shame is that it truly heals an expression. Shame heals an expression. It is so interesting. There is no way you can really work with shame as an emotion, because it's very complex. It's more like, it is an emotion, but it's less an emotion, but more a suppressor of emotion. So it comes and it lays on top, because it often steps in as a protective mechanism. Don't be too much. Don't pour out too much. Don't go to the emotions that do not feel safe due to certain traumas. And so shame comes in and stays on top to suppress everything else. And the greatest thing that we can do when we're working with shame is expression. And often that is also the one that is most affected, you know? So it's like a back and forth. But being seen and what is there and what is present is the most important thing when we're working with shame. And the interesting thing, as you were saying, like you expressed the in the streets, and yes, people might have turned around, but we often think that we're so important. That's so interesting, right? Like there's a part within us that thinks, okay, I'm not important enough, I'm not good enough, blah, blah, blah. But when it comes to that, we think like the whole world basically turns around us. And like if I do an in the streets, like they will think X, Y, Z. But what actually happens? Like, does anyone really care? Like, no, they just keep on going their own ways, you know?
Yeah.
And having this experience actually really healing. It's actually not really, everything is not about you, you know? Yeah. And that is something that might be a little bit scary, but also very freeing. When you feel that actually there's a liberation happening. It's not all about me. I can just be here and express myself, and it's great because I can just bring my truth into the world, you know? In a liberated way.
Yeah, I love that.
And it doesn't define.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's that it's such an interesting balance. I think that between like I am important, I am not that important, or you know, everything is about me, everything or nothing's about me. Just having that play or that dance, because in a sense everything is about me, everything is about you, everything is about each of us, and at the same time, for the others, it's about them. So it's not about the rest of us. I have this experience a lot of times when I'm doing some movement classes and somatic classes with groups, and I can notice so much that everyone is either in their own mind, just paying attention, or you know, thinking that others are judging them or stuff like that because of the way that they are moving. And usually if I pick that up in the room, I just stop and I say, you know, nobody else cares about you. Everybody else thinks that everybody else is judging them. So actually no one is judging anyone, because everyone is so focused on thinking that everybody else is judging them. And it's like, you know, that permission again, as you're saying, you know, nobody else is thinking about you. Everybody else is worried about their own thing. And even if they are, who cares? You know, what's the difference? Of course, we have that trauma, so we need to work on that conditioning. But yeah.
It is also like, it's so interesting. I really love this conversation. It's also really interesting. Something that also really got present for me this year, especially, but also last year a little bit, was that we always have this conditioning of like, oh, when I show this, I'm too much. You know, when I show my anger, I'm too much. When I show like my childish self, I'm too much. You know, like this too muchness so big often. And in emotional release, we also work a lot and we learn a lot about resonance, and which is very musical actually, because we're all energy. Oh, whole thing. Anyway, when we tune into resonance, it is so interesting. Actually, when you're not really expressing your truth, for example, you are actually feeling really sad, let's say that, like you're moving through a grieving process, but you do not want to show it because you do not want to overwhelm the person in the room with you. You hide it, and you might hide it underneath a layer of like positivity, laughter, joyfulness. And this joy is impossible to resonate with the other person because it's not your truth. You're actually grieving. So what happens is that you actually become too much by not being in your truth. What happens is that a distance is created because you are not in your truth. The other person cannot resonate with you, and so the other person will actually feel that you're too much because you're not in your truth. Your truth is never too much for this world, never, because the world can resonate with you. And sometimes you feel that as well, like sometimes you feel that in a conversation with someone, you're like, you're kind of like drifting away, like nothing is really like sticking with you, and suddenly the person steps into their truth and suddenly you're listening, you know, you're really there and you're really listening. And I so love that, and I find it so fascinating because your truth is never too much. It actually happens when you're not speaking your truth, because this is actually what takes up space. When there's like a false kind of layer that, and the other person is like, I can't, you know, like there's nothing to stick to, there's nothing to resonate to. There's no connection. You're actually coming into disconnection not only from yourself, but therefore, of course, from the world around you.
Yeah. And this is why a lot of times, and I mean, like, for many of us, if we're having conversations with someone, intuitively we can feel like, you know, something is off, or like, I mean, I do this for work as well, so it's easy for me to pick this up a lot of times, but just in general, you know, like using our intuition, and sometimes it's like someone like feels for whatever reason, like, and that is that resonance. You know, that's the energy that it's not perhaps spoken, but that we can actually feel it. And you know, I would love to know, Chris, from you as well, like from a resonance perspective, and this is my experience as well, the actual sound, because I use a lot of like humming, I use a lot of like, you know, chanting, even just or anything, and the resonance that I feel in my body is what's actually part of what I feel that's healing. That is what you shared at the beginning, you know, about self-regulating. Can you share about that aspect a little bit?
Beautiful. Yes, exactly. Like really, really powerful practice. What I love to do is, for example, today I had a one-on-one vocal session this morning, and I guided her into her heart space. First of all, I love to start with the heart, because this is actually what most of the people can resonate with the most. And I also love to start with humming, because it is internal. So there is a certain kind of containment, there's a safety that is present, and afterwards we move into the sounding. But it is so interesting as well, because I'm always inviting in the resonance as well, like what is truly resonating with your heart. And then we, you know, wander down into the root and into the womb we were today. But what is truly resonating there? And you can play around with the tones, and sometimes it needs a little bit of practice, you know, if it's your first time doing that, you know, it sometimes needs a little bit of time, but suddenly you feel like, oh, this actually deeply resonates in my heart, you know. And then usually also we went down into the womb today. At some point emotions start to flow when a voice is really, really resonant, because then it touches a part that might have been hidden, you know, or not as like easily to connect to, and suddenly there's a connection happening. That is resonance for me as well. There are parts coming together and there's a connection happening, a resonance. Yeah, something is resonating with something, and then suddenly tears flow, you know, and there's a release happening. And that is a really powerful practice when it comes, that's why I also love to use the term vocal embodiment, because it's really about feeling and becoming, or like moving into the experience that the voice is actually so deeply connected with our body, and to bring the voice back into the body and have this experience, not only singing from here, you know, or toning and sounding from here, but like really bringing it into the body feeling that our body is a resonance corpus, you know, that we can work with, and that is actually really healing. And also with the nervous system part that you were saying, we naturally regulate our nervous system when we hum and when we sing. And as you're doing it, you know that we have a vagus nerve that is running down here. The vagus nerve is vital for our parasympathetic nervous system state. So everything that's around rest and digest. And when we hum and when we sing, we naturally stimulate the vagus nerve. And therefore we are stimulating the parasympathetic state. And it is actually way easier, and that really was a changing point when I started to understand this from a nervous system and somatic practice perspective. It is way easier to regulate our nervous system when we're working from the body to the brain, rather than from the brain to the body. So often, like in the beginning of the spiritual movement and whatever, you know, on our own journey, we get told like, oh, just sit down and meditate, you know, and you regulate your nervous system. Yes, I love meditation, but it's way less effective or efficient to work from the brain. So like, okay, I'm just quieting my mind, you know, rather than moving into the body and coming from there. Because the fibers, 80% of the vagus nerve fibers are working from the body to the brain. So stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system state is from the body. So breath work, but especially humming, singing, all of these tools are so powerful to regulate the nervous system way faster, more efficient, easily. And it's also easier to connect to because you're still actively doing something. And that soothes the mind a little bit as well. So really powerful practice. It's actually the best practice you can do if you wanna ease down body, mind, and soul.
Yeah. And you know, ever since I started my journey, one of the first things was that reconnection to the body and embodiment, and using the body as the vehicle to then be able to either sit in meditation or then to be able to just keep on doing and staying in a meditative state. And that's just, you know, as I keep on telling most of my students, you know, meditation mostly is all about presence and awareness. It's not about you sit cross-legged, close your eyes, and, you know, that's meditation. This is a meditation as well. Anything can be a meditation. Using the body is such a powerful thing. And we need to understand, you know, a lot of times, like, yes, there's different moments and different practices from, you know, the body to the mind, and then there's others from the mind to the body. And we need to, as you're saying, resonate and to connect to what is the right one for us. And there is so much in being able to use the body to be able to settle the energies, as you were saying, connecting, activating the parasympathetic nervous system so that we can actually be more relaxed, be in a state of homeostasis and being in a place that feel, you know, well, as long as we are still doing stuff, and that's okay. And I think that, you know, it's such a powerful thing to be able to use our bodies and to use our voice and to use the instruments that we have, and at the same time the power of silence. You know, it's one of the things when I was living in the Tibetan Buddhist retreat center, we had what we called essential speech. So you only spoke if something was essential. Like if we practice and we use our voice, we're using our voice. If there's something essential to be shared, we share it. If not, silence. And I think that combination of connecting more deeply to our truth or our voice and our expression, and at the same time to the silence, is what also gives more meaning to the voice. Because if I am just sharing non-stop nonsense, that's also an issue.
Yes. Wow. I'm so glad you bring this in, because that's actually like, it is super vital. It is such a vital part of this whole like work. I always love to say, like, there at some point, like years ago, there was this mantra coming through. I was like, this is actually something that I would love to share with people. It was just this sentence coming through of the mantra, the silence is as important as the mantra itself. The silence is as important as the mantra itself. And you know this because you're practicing sounding and mantras, but after every mantra that we're singing, we're honoring a moment of silence. And in our society, it's often like appreciation, you know, like clapping straight away and standing ovations and everything. But it's actually, yes, okay, it's celebration, and I fucking love that as well, you know, but it is also a representation of our society a little bit, of like, okay, this was nice, and now the next thing, you know, like it just like, there's no silence in between to actually letting that sink in and vibrate what you just heard or what you just sung. And when working with the voice, and in general with emotions, it is often that we can easily fall into a loop, you know? Like in the first moment something resonates and you're sounding from there, but then also as a facilitator you can tell when at some point it's not resonating anymore. Like, yeah, they're still sounding from that space, or yeah, emotional release practice, you know, they're still sounding, they're still breathing, they might be still screaming, crying, whatever it is, what comes out, but it doesn't resonate anymore. And you can feel it. And this is the moment when you feel it's a loop. And in that moment, the most powerful thing that we can do is bringing them into silence. And being like, okay, take a deep breath. And that is the moment when emotions flow. It is often that it is in silence, after the breath, after the sound, in the vibration after. And it is such a delicate, soft and sweet spot, but it is vital. It is full. Actually, the silence is never empty. It is full of experience if we're ready to lean into it and experience it truly.
Yeah, and it is, as you know, as you're saying with that, there's a lot of times that I'm not so much musical, and I do understand at the same time that you can't have a song full with music. You need the spaces of silence as well.
Yes.
And those are important, or as important as, you know, a beat or anything else. And to understand that, and to understand as well, like, if music or sounds or vibrations or, you know, different frequencies are able to bring about different experiences or feelings or moods, how would our own internal ones do that as well?
Absolutely. And it's so beautiful because, like, for me, it's also like the moment, like I can always feel that when singing mantras as well. It's like sometimes you're going like, rah, you know, and you have this celebration phase, you know, and it's wild and it's loud. And then I love to really break it down again, you know, and to really have like a long slow down. And we're then just in this space of like becoming quieter and quieter, but we're still singing and we're really feeling it. You know, we're coming more from the action, you know, which is fucking beautiful as well and powerful and expressive, into the beingness, the being of sound. And for me, it's always been, and it probably always will be, about like these like moments when your voice breaks, you know, And it's so like there's vulnerability in there, and there's so much treasure in these moments. And that is why it's also never about perfection. It is really that you feel these moments when your voice breaks and everything is getting tender. This is when everyone really starts to listen, and you really truly start to listen because you truly start to listen. Such a powerful moment.
Yeah. And I think that part of that, at least for me, is a lot of times an understanding on, am I, if I'm expressing something, if I'm expressing a sound or a mantra, or even if I'm singing, is that for me or is that for others? And I think that when it's for me, it's for others as well. But when it's for others, I am bypassing me or my connection, as you were saying, that resonance, that, truth. And I think that that's such an important aspect a lot of times. Chrissy, I'm aware of our time. I would love to know, if someone, is noticing that they are perhaps not able to speak up or not able to connect. You already shared a couple of things. Is there something else that for someone that is in that space and they haven't yet started to do anything about it? Any other recommendation or tip that you would share?
Beautiful. I would always, I would go and see, first of all, what kind of topic might lie behind that. So, for example, when there's shame, I would move into that with emotional release, for example. Just a method. So, tuning, and you can do that for yourself as well, but it's easier to do it with a practitioner because it's just someone outside of you guiding you through it. But really, first of all, coming into the body, coming into touch with the body, feeling your body, and then moving into the breath, and then just feeling and sensing what wants to come up. And you can, like in an emotional release session, we do it really free, basically. So really just seeing whatever comes up in the body, and we're moving from there, moving into the breath, the expression, different tools, IFS and all of that. But you can also set the intention, okay, I want to work with my throat. And so you can tune into your throat and then feel, okay, how does your throat feel like when you're breathing in there? And the breath is really important for that. And maybe you can then feel like, oh, it's feeling quite tight. You can also use touch, body work. And then you can come into touch, for example, okay, what do I need to see here? Like, how does this tightness feel like? Is there something that I could compare this to? Yeah, it feels like someone is choking me, How do you feel? Like, what kind of hands? Like, are these more male hands or female hands? And you can really go down and really have an intimate conversation, basically, with this part of your body, and perhaps a part that is traumatized. It is always easier to do it with a practitioner because it can get really heady sometimes if someone is not guiding it through and also having body work with you. But this is something that you can do in order to move into that and explore a little bit what may lie here. What you can do on a practice level is, as I was already saying, coming from a raw sounding space. So anything that comes with raw sounds, it is powerful. Do it at home, do it by yourself, like make sure no one hears you, especially when you're working with shame, this is really important. Have a safe space where you feel like, yeah, I can make sounds here. You can also cover your face if that feels more comfortable, and then really moving into raw sounds. So really moving into the space where you might meet this shame barrier. I'm just talking about shame because often it is shame that is actually there. Sometimes they lie different things as well, but often it is shame that we're experiencing when we're feeling we're not expressing fully. So meeting that shame and sounding from that shame is actually a really powerful practice. So either you have a practitioner or you do it alone, cover your face, or just have a room where you feel safe in, and then coming into raw sounding. How does it feel like that I'm feeling so resistant to sound? How does it sound like that I'm feeling so ashamed of my voice, of my expression? Yeah. And you can hum if you want to have it more contained, but eventually you feel like, okay, sounds want to come out, so you can let them flow. And then always like allowing a space of silence afterwards for the vibrations to settle. These are like two of many things that you can do. If you feel like, okay, I have a connection to my voice, but I want to bring it deeper into my body and connect these two even more, it is really beautiful to combine movement with voice. So maybe you can have some sounds on, or you really just having your breath and you're going into movements or into dance, whatever suits you, whatever feels good, and you're just like moving intuitively, letting yourself be moved, and then breathing into the movement and bringing the voice into that. So how does it sound when you really truly open your chest, you know? And also working with archetypes is powerful here, like working with the queen or the king, whatever, you know, like, and you know, how does it sound when I'm really truly embodying that, like, I can feel it in my stomach, you know, like in my power center. Like there's so much you can do. But yeah, this would be, for example, a practice to bring the voice more into the body if this is something you're interested in.
Beautiful. Thank you, Chrissy, for sharing that. And for everybody that might be interested on potentially working with someone like you, where can they find you? Where can they go? How can they work with you?
Beautiful, yeah. So I'm most easily found on Instagram. I've never built a website because it was all just happening, you know. So Instagram, it's Cia__music. So it's CEA__music. And this is where you can find me more, or it's the easiest way. But I can also give you my email address so you can put that somewhere. But Instagram is usually the way.
Beautiful. I will put your Instagram link so that people can find easily in the show notes. And thank you so much, Chrissy. Thank you everyone for listening. You know, if you heard something that resonated with you, let us know. Comment whatever it is that you're finding this episode. If you have been doing some of this work already, you know, reconnecting with your voice or with, you know, the power of sound or any release work, let us know how it's been. A lot of times when we share our experiences, it supports others to share theirs and to then allow this to be more open or more common so that others open up to this. So thank you, Chrissy, once more for being here, for your presence, for your energy, and for the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for the work that you're doing. It's so beautiful to spend this time with you.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, once more. And I'll see you, everyone, on the next episode. Bye.
Bye.
What did you like the most about this episode? Take a moment to think about what change you can make in your life today.
Share your conscious action on social media using #ConsciousAction and tagging @ConsciousActionNZ so we can celebrate your impact on the world and create a ripple effect.
One easy action we would love for you to take right now is to share, like, and subscribe to this podcast. This will help us get these messages out into the world and inspire more people to take conscious action in their own lives, contributing to the better world we hope for.